Well, hello everyone. I'm really glad, very happy to be here. I know Cassandra has to leave and there's a plane she has to catch. And I know that this is the panel that is, yeah, go ahead. And this panel is the only one keeping us all from lunch. So we'll make it right to the point. And especially that, this panel is about strategies. So I think that so far we are shifting from diagnosing barriers to exploring concrete strategies that would enable women entrepreneurs to scale, compete, and lead in this rapidly changing global economy. So you are all leaders in your field. And my first question is, please, let's begin by introducing yourselves quickly, because we know you're leaders in your field, and then maybe stating one or two maximum strategies that you believe are essential for accelerating Canada's growth, innovation, self-sufficiency, and sustainability.
I get to start?
Oh, wow. Go ahead, of course.
I'm Danielle Barkman. I'm a director at WBE Canada. So we're the Women's Business Enterprise Canada Council. Working similarly with CAMSC, we bring women or underrepresented entrepreneurs, business owners into a certification process that is important when corporations and government are looking to develop inclusive procurement strategies. And when they're tracking. So when they're tracking their spend, it's very important that the risk and the mitigation process is there so that they have a verified list of suppliers. I always say I'm that person that at the end of my career, I've worked myself out of a job, right? At the end of the day, there still is inequality. And that is why there is that certification process. I think a strategy, I think the biggest thing that we advocate for is that supplier diversity and diversifying your supply chain is not a program. There's no start and an end to it. It's a strategy, just like you have a marketing strategy or a finance strategy. It's a business strategy that makes economic sense, and there is proof of return on investment to it. And that is probably one of the hardest things to sell to C-suite and to executive leaders that we face every day. From the women business side of it, I think we see a lot, and Cassandra, you can probably speak to it too. Why do I need to become certified? What is it there for me? The goal is it's not a handout, but it's that extra piece that scores you more points on an RFP, hopefully opens doors. We deal with, we've talked about a construction here a lot. The amount of backdoor deals and locker room conversations, we're trying to overcome those barriers, and certification can certainly help with that.
Well, thank you very much, Danielle. Now,
no. Just jump back. Sorry.
Thank you, Nathalie. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Nathalie Bradbury. Is this on now? Organization of Women in International Trade. We've got chapters on 4 continents around the world. I'm OWIT Ottawa, the president of OWIT Ottawa. We've got some colleagues in the room here. And we have OWIT Toronto. There's many chapters in the United States, as well as in Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, in Europe, where the WTO is located, World Trade Organization, in Geneva plus Brussels, so for the EU and the UK. And we've got 10 chapters in Africa and the Middle East, and so we keep growing. We do not charge a lot. We charge in Ottawa under $100 to be a member. It gives you access to all the other chapters around the world at the membership rate. It gives you access, a means to meet women, to work with women, to give you a trusted partner or someone to work with. It is not a business certification process. It complements some of these other organizations. We are not women exclusive. anyone can join. However, it's a women predominant organization. We have people who are trade lawyers, trade professionals, bankers, small business owners, everything. We run the gamut. Personally, I was just lucky. I just come from an immigrant family, so I spoke French before I spoke English, and then I learned German because we were living in England. So I'm, didn't want to relearn French. And then we came to Canada, went to French high school, so I learned Spanish. So I already, coming out of high school, I had 4 languages. And then when I joined the Foreign Service, I had to take on Portuguese for Brazil. So all I'm saying is you don't really know what you're going to do in life necessarily. You just find yourself somewhere. My parents just kind of plonked themselves in Canada, like a lot of parents do. So they were a bit adventurous. And I learned over time that I was probably better at numbers. So I became more of an economist. And I just want people to think here in this room that you can do anything you can put your mind to, and don't listen to what people tell you. I was a middle child, so I wasn't considered the one that would do the best, but I joined the Foreign Service. I spoke 5 languages, et cetera, right? Wasn't the, so I'm just saying, do anything you can. And I do think that OWIT is a small organization compared to some of these other bigger ones within Canada, but we've got that international reach. And we work very closely with the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, which I hope we'll be able to talk about later.
Good. I checked my watch because it's now good afternoon. So, okay. My name is Cassandra Dorrington. I'm President and CEO of CAMSC. What we do, as Danielle just said, we are a certifying body, and we look at Black, Indigenous, racialized, as well as refugee-owned businesses. And when I say certifying body, that's not all we do. That's your entry in, because the next part is really about the connection. And so we certify, connect, we advocate, and we develop, because we're trying to do the cycle of getting these diverse businesses into the supply chain. When I think of, Danielle talked a lot about certification, and we've heard a lot this morning about financing for whether it be Black women and everything else. There's a whole lot of money out there. The biggest issue for me is we're not connecting beyond giving them finances. How do we get them into the supply chain? I've given you this, what's next? So for me, the big thing is when I think about strategies, breaking that nut to get into public procurement is huge. It's absolutely huge. And so if we're able to, when we heard the minister talk today, there's consultations now going on about Buy Canadian. We need to make sure our voice is heard in there so we get included in what that looks like. Because I love the fact of nation building project, but if they do not include us, that's a problem. The discussion now is how do we make sure that definition includes what diversity looks like? Because that to me is one of the big strategies is going to break the back and drive the Canadian economy. The other strategy I'd like us to think about is we have a bunch of small businesses. That's wonderful, but we need to collectively come together and make larger businesses so we can bid on opportunities. No one's going to give you a 100,000 opportunity for a $20 billion business. You're not going to get that. But how do we come together to create this consortium of companies that we're now big enough to be able to bid? And that's not just locally, but that's internationally. So I think the time is now. The door is open for global trade, and we should be looking at that. So those are my strategies.
Super. Thank you, Cassandra. Kinga.
Thank you very much. I'm Kinga Petrovai. I'm a workplace organizational learning consultant, researcher, and podcaster. And I come to this kind of my story informs what I think our strategy should be in terms of this very quickly changing technological world. So I come from the world of engineering. I immigrated, well, my parents immigrated to Canada as a child, when I was a child, and they escaped communist Romania at the time. We're Hungarians from Romania, and I came a year later. And they're both engineers, and they really inspired me to go into engineering. And that's what I did. I studied electrical engineering, and I started my career in that field. And of course, very, very few women were in my class, which was certainly something to get used to, but something I also had a lot of positive experiences with. And I started my career in engineering knowing that it would always bring that technology, systems, critical thinking to something human related as well. And through my work, I came to realize that that is actually the world of learning. And I moved in after years of being in the field. I moved into that world by getting my master's in learning technologies and my PhD in educational technologies as well. And now I bring research to inform how organizations create systems of learning, and using research methods to inform that and to design ways for the organization to be continuously learning. And I think that is a really critical aspect of how we can move forward, is that we do need to create systems of learning in which we are constantly updating our skills. And I think as women also, we've been told, oh, you need to be a programmer, you need to program, you need to jump into this. And the reality is we no longer really need to program. Programmers are being the first ones to be cut out of industry. And what we really need is continuously critical thinking, need to really understand strategy, needing to be very good at looking at multiple sources of information, bringing information together, which is what we will always need to be good at, and bringing that to organizations.
Well, thank you, Kinga. So my next question is, as we've heard from previous panels, and to get women-led organization into value chains, to get them into, again, procurement, public procurement, we have to start by financing and scaling strategically. So my question is, how do you see women entrepreneurs navigating these risk, innovation, access to capital constraints to scale in a sustainable way? Because we want to have them, access to this value chain, but it takes money also to do this before we also get into procurement. Who would like to start?
Let me jump in there, okay? There's a lot of financing out there that I'm hearing about. So, I see customers line up and they're talking about it.
Mhm.
The one thing to do is be very clear on how much you need and what that looks like. Because it's too easy to get too much money and not know what to do with it. So to be very clear, because business on a regular basis are going through what exactly do I need? And you need to know how much is going to be debt and how much is going to be financing or grant type money that you don't have to pay back, right? So it's important to get that connection together. But to do that, make sure you have the right advisory group helping you through that. It's not sort of jump in the middle. There's groups out there that can help you understand what's the best match for you. Also, I think it's important as you go into getting bigger dollars to make sure you do have an advisory group around you who's helping you guide that. I'm on a board. I'm on a not-for-profit board. I have a group of advisors who are CPOs who are helping me think through what this looks like. So I'm thinking, as an entrepreneur, if I'm getting $1 million, I'm getting $500,000. I want someone to help me through that. So make sure you're identifying how much equity you're going to give away, how much debt you're going to be in, and that you have advisors helping you through that. Because again, this is there's going to be feedback. There's going to be sort of what's the money be? What are you using the money for? How do you turn it around? You need to be able to have that information. So you need to have a team helping you through that. When I was thinking, like, there's a lot of people, I was talking to one organization, FACE, and they were giving money away. And someone said, oh, I haven't done a business, but I want $250,000. You're not going to get $250,000 without some backup behind what that looks like. So start out for what is required for you to build the next step, or partner with somebody if that makes sense, that they have the knowledge base, you can get the money, and now you're able to move forward. So it's a very intricate line dance to be able to go that way.
Well, absolutely, Cassandra. And, working in Quebec with the Réseau des Femmes d'Affaires du Québec and the Maya platform, the one of the main things was looking at, okay, access to procurement takes money, and also, embedding into some of the platforms the way to access financing when you get a contract is also key. So, and we have been working, for the last 7 years, through WEKH, etc., looking at this better integrated way, looking at the whole path, to entrepreneurship, to scaling up, etc., and making things maybe even easier for women-led organization. Yes, I think Danielle.
Yeah, I think
could say
to add to
something.
that too, we've been across the country and spoke to so many women entrepreneurs, and I think a message that really resonated with me is that if your banker is transaction in, transaction out, then you need a new banker. You need somebody that is going to work with you and give you the resources. We had a conference last week, and one of the questions asked to an entrepreneur, solopreneur, doing really well, what happens if you get a 50,000 unit order? She's like, well, that would end me. And so you're in a business, you're a startup, we are at past proof of concept, you're ready to scale. We talked about like that's a big barrier, but how are you working with your financial institution? And I mean, part of the work we do is really building those partnerships with those financial institutions. Many of them have women's programs that you can access, and so look into that and really build that relationship. And like Cassandra said, you need that advisory, you need that team around you that's going to be able to build it. But ultimately, you want to scale, and if that's going to break your business, then you need to work through that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So the one
Go
group
ahead.
we have in Ottawa is called She Boot, and it's part of this advisory group approach. And it's now across the country, and it's women founders funding women founders. So what it is, it gives you it's a group that women investors are listening to your pitch for funding, and they help you develop your pitch, and they work with you. And it's kind of like a mini Dragon's Den, but they get you ready for the next step, for something like the Dragon's Den, and then eventually to proper banks, etc. So they are women. It's women venture capital for women, right? And it's so women understand best what women are doing. And it's been said already several times that venture capital, only 4% of venture capital goes towards women. So it's to complement that. So this is another way that you can get the support you need, and for people who understand best what you're doing.
And I think what's interesting, what you were talking about, She Boot, is that, yes, as an entrepreneur to be getting the funding, but also they are training women to fund businesses. There's also a lack of investors. Women often are much lower percentage, are investing in companies and gaining capital and building their own wealth by being investors. So it's also important to look and learn on that side.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. If we look now, and I think the question I would start with Nathalie, we have all these global tensions that are reshaping how Canadian firms engage internationally. I think, again, we've touched upon this with Wendy, with the minister, of course, and the panels before. And I was wondering, how can women-led businesses pivot and diversify and seize opportunities across Europe, Asia, and even within Canada? So, of course, own interprovincial markets.
Right. So that's what's interesting. Trade is suddenly, the be all and end all, right? It's like everything everywhere all at once. You see it everywhere. And so Canada now looking to diversify. What's interesting is, we're all in the room here. We're into diversity and inclusion, right? That's what we're here for, right? And so looking beyond the US, there's a lot of people in this room who come from diverse backgrounds anyway, right? So people who come from diverse cultures, who are used to looking at it from different perspectives, right? I mean, going to the US is easy, and, they play hockey like we do, or soccer or whatever, but, it's good to look elsewhere. And we have to kind of build on what we discussed just now, because women have to make sure they have a good business plan, and you have to do your market research. It's even more important when you're talking about countries where they have another different culture, different language, a different way of doing things, different business associations, etc. So you have to do more homework when you're going overseas, just like if you're in Quebec, if you're trying to sell to BC, or if you're in a regulated industry trying to sell across provincial borders, it's like that, but even more so, right? So it's besides that, building your business plan and all that, then you have to learning how to scale up. It's even more, you really have to prove yourself when you're trying to go internationally.
Okay, thank you. Let me just jump on that. Okay, international, you're right. It's the latest, it's in vogue, but be careful how you do this. Because when you go into market, one, scan where it's best to go in, where you fit going into the market, what are the least amount of barriers for you to get in. Once you're inside, do you have a partner on the ground? I remember when I went down, I was doing work in the Caribbean. I thought, oh yeah, I'll breeze in, I'll do it, I'll breeze back, and I'll come down a month later. Nothing gets done when I was gone because I didn't have feet on the ground. Do you have partners on the ground who are doing the work when you're not in country? And so you have to start looking at sort of the e-commerce beforehand. Do some work beforehand. Do some research. Do your trade missions in and out beforehand. We took a guy down to New Zealand. Corey signed a contract with somebody's like, oh yeah, we're in. 6 months later, found out this person didn't have enough financing behind them to actually advance on the idea they have. So there's a lot of work, and it's like dating. There's a lot of work to do international trade. Prep yourself for that by the research in front of that, using the government service that enable you when you're in country to do that, and then do some trade missions, do some of your preliminary work to start to identify, who the actual set of people, who the actual company you want to partner with when you're in country.
But how can we help? We want to go faster. And it seems always like, the responsibility, the main burden is still, on women-led, on SMEs that, have so many also other problems and challenges, etc. Is there a way that we can help? Are there any, how can we reshape some of the programs? And are you at all concerned with the fact that now the federal government has not dedicated money directly to women entrepreneurship? However, it has advocated for a gender-based analysis, on the program.
Sounds like you've had that discussion with them already.
And this, we had a wonderful discussion yesterday.
I would like to point
led
out,
by
though,
WEKH.
that Women in Trade never got any of that funding. We are the Organization of Women in Trade. It's been given to women entrepreneurs in Canada, women entrepreneurship organizations, but never for women in trade organizations. So we're just continuing what we've been doing. And part of it is a question of visibility too. Part of it is whether you have a national scale organization is one thing, but we have an international scale. We are like a mini foreign service to help all you, right? All of you. So if you reach out to the organizations in Canada, such as Women in International Trade, such as the Asia Pacific Foundation, such as the Foundation for International Trade Training, where you can have certified international trade professionals helping you. So reach out to the ones who know, and they can help you with that. And we have chapters around the world to you can also reach out to.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead,
I think
please, Danielle.
to add to that, I think it's a really key point. I owned businesses several years back, and I think at that point we had this. I at least had an imposter syndrome of that doesn't apply to me. And what I do like about the conversations we're having now on trade is that we are opening our eyes and expanding our opportunities, that we don't have to work just inside our city or just inside our region, that there is opportunity for us outside of Canadian borders. I always encourage know your regional trade commissioner, build relationships at a local level. Leverages the resources like you mentioned, or within our councils that we partner with these organizations and try to bring those resources to you, so that you can do it. But I think what you don't know is what you don't know. So don't be scared of that, but be safe and cautious on how you move forward with that, and really leverage the people in your own community that can guide you through that.
Can I just add on to that? Because I think all of this is so important. And in a sense, I think that needs to start, and maybe women should be encouraged to do this from the very beginning of their career, is to really build those networks as a way of being a learning community. So as a way of continuously trying to go to conferences, trying to go to different events, creating your own group, what Jennifer Cross also said, creating your own group and building those relationships, but through a lens of continuously learning. So you're maybe going to Europe or to Asia every year, maybe, or every other year, and reconnecting and learning from those groups. So when you are trying to expand into that market, you not only know a little bit of who's there, but you also know their cultural context, which is very different. Just going to the UK, actually, there's a cultural clash and a cultural difference, and trying to enter in a business sense, there's nuances that you can only understand if you really go over an extended period of time, have a way of connecting and learning about them. So I think having those networks, and I think women often maybe are less represented in these networks than men are, should be built continuously.
True. Thank you.
Can I just
Yes,
overlay on
course.
top of that? The Canada trade missions, I'm not sure if they're doing this year, are fabulous in the fact that when a minister's there, all eyes are on that trade group when they show up. When we went to Australia, there were like 300 businesses that arrived, and they got a lot of attention down there because Minister Ng was there at the same time. So when I looked around the room, there were a small percentage of women in that group who went on the trade missions. So I'm encouraging you to take advantage of that. Don't do it on your own. That's a lot of time and effort on your own to build that. Join a group. CAMSC does trade missions. CC does trade. There's a number of trade missions out there. Canada does trade. Ontario does trade missions. OWIT. Pick a group that, therefore, they've done a lot of the legwork. You become part of that team to go down. It might be industry specific. It might be in a geographical area. Use that as your learning curve to start doing that. And that, I think, Tania, will advance rapidly so that you're not just doing it on your own, you're doing it in a group. And therefore, that peer knowledge and some of these people had gone to the Singapore one, they went to the Australia one. They actually were developing a little group within the group now that were supporting each other as they were traveling and doing international trade.
Since I have you, Cassandra, I have a question on inclusive procurement. We have been talking about inclusive procurement, I think, since 2018 now.
Long time, longer than that.
Longer than this, but specifically, through, again, this follow-ups, etc., and inside the West. Has the needle moved a little bit?
Say that last one
The
again.
needle, has things progressed?
Inclusive procurement, where do I start? You
have 3 minutes. If not, you're going to miss your plane.
The age-old thing is that, like Danielle, I'd like us to be out of a job. It's not there. We need businesses to be thinking about. We need the government to include that in part of what's going on. There's a social procurement policy that government in Canada is out there. My question is, how does that relate to our Buy Canadian? That social procurement means that's all of us included inside that, but I don't see the actual linkage to Buy Canadian yet. We need that to be part and parcel, because once the Canadian government does that, once they demand that of their tier ones, we will start to see inclusive procurement. We will start to be recognized as part of what goes on. That has not gone away. It's been at the low bubble, has bumped up from time to time. We need it to be front and center in this new Buy Canadian. That means buy from all Canadians, and we're there.
Thank you.
I can add a little bit
Please
to
go
that
ahead.
too. With there's a lot more looking at tier 2 and tier 3 spend, which I think is moving the needle a bit, because if you are an airline, your tier 1 is going to be fuel. There's and then who your suppliers are, but how do we then get that fuel company to report up their tier 2 to tier 3, and how does that reporting then go up? So I think we've moved the needle a little bit through that, but it then becomes everybody has to be working towards that common goal. And if not everyone's reporting or involved in that, the circle has many gaps, and we don't move forward on that.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Kinga, maybe before the last question, and my last question would be, I'm telling you so that you prepare while Kinga is talking. If you had in front of you policymakers, financial institutions, industry leaders, what would be a call for action? 1, But Kinga, before, we have heard a lot about the digital transformation, and you are in that field, and how much is now a prerequisite for this global transformation, for being part again of the value chains, etc. So how do you see, how do you see us evolving in that, especially what we have heard about, the difficulty in adoption, in AI adoption, also technology, especially for SMEs?
Right. So I think it's very important to be open to learning about whatever the new technology is. And I think that needs to be a shift to not just thinking about AI right now, but to be continuously thinking about how do I learn something new? How do I deal with change? And I think sometimes there's a little bit too much of a focus of we need to learn this new technology. And in schools, there's often a focus of, oh, we need to learn this technology. When in fact, by the time someone graduates or in less and less time, that is irrelevant. And what we really need to understand and learn is how do we learn something new? How do we deal with continuous change and disruption? And I think that is something that as a country, we should be really not only putting in our school system, but for small businesses, for everyone, on how do we deal with continuous change. And with that same approach, how do I become curious? How can I be continuously curious to learn about the new AI tool, to learn about how this is impacting my business? So staying completely curious and not being afraid is very, very important. And I think for that, it's also important to be a member and of different types of groups, different kind of communities, and continuously be learning and always have that lens, either with the person you are talking to, maybe your customer, but also with new technologies coming up, of being curious about trying to learn about that perspective, that new thing, and being very cautious about the new shiny thing. I am very weary about, oh, well, we must all use AI. We must all understand a little bit about what this is, and then step back and think, how is this important in my life, in my business? What is my business really about? What is the core purpose of what I'm trying to do? And I think with new technologies, there's always no conversation about thinking critically about what is the purpose, and then is this actually suitable for my purpose? There's too much talk about you always have to try something new. You always have to try, and you always have to learn and implement something new. You don't always have to implement something new just because someone came up with it. You have to know something about it and think about how does it suit my purpose. I think that's
Thank you,
really
Kinga.
important.
Let's drive the technology. Call for action. Who would like to start? You. Okay.
Call
Please,
for action.
Danielle, go ahead.
I think if you look at the corporations and governments, that this isn't just a social responsibility, that our supply chains need to reflect our community, and they don't. And so how you as a leader in a corporation implement that business strategy and make it a priority in your procurement strategy to diversify. And now's the time. We're rebranding the word diversity, and even in our world, we're shifting from using supplier diversity into inclusive procurement. Now's the time to really build that into your business strategy, and I encourage corporations to do so.
Yeah, and inclusive procurement is within the standards for sustainability, etc., being developed. Thank you, Danielle. Absolutely. Yes, Nathalie.
Something that we said to the Standing Committee on International Trade is, and many people have said that procurement in Canada, you have to start in Canada. We have to get the procurement right here before we can improve things internationally. So the federal government has an Indigenous target of 5% procurement from Indigenous entrepreneurs. We need one for women-owned businesses. If we could get to 25% of women-owned businesses of government procurement, that would be just amazing. It'll take a number of years, but We need a target. We don't even have a target. So that's where the domestic can lead internationally. At the international level, other countries, whether it's France, Korea, Japan, they build national supply chains in all sorts of fields, and that's what we need to do. So it's not just the Canadian government players, it's also pushing the large Canadian companies, and some are good at that, or some used to be good at that. I don't know if they still are, but we need to get them to put the onus on them to bring Canadian companies with them, Canadian diverse companies with them on their global trajectory.
Yes, thank you, Nathalie.
Let me just end. I also agree with the national procurement targets. And I think we need to have data transparency. So if they're putting these nation building projects out, let's start getting some data back to see who's been included in that. Where we see gaps, we can start to build on that. Because right now it looks like it's open for all, but we don't know that yet.
Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. Kinga, very quickly, you have
Well, I
1
think
minute.
in terms of so much in our world, we need to be thinking about things as a system and making those systems much more effective. And I think sometimes maybe there's like band-aid solutions to the procurement process or to any process. And so really stepping back and improving the system so that it can be faster, more efficient, and really be able to look at all the wonderful Canadian industries that we can tap into would be really important.
Well, thank you so much, Kinga. Really, I think a round of applause for our panel. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your insights, for respecting the time. Cassandra, I hope you'll make it. And thank you again, and maybe back to Wendy.
I really wasn't trying to rush you, but I'm sure Cassandra's having kittens, so let's escort her out with a siren so she gets her flight on time. But no, thank you so much. It was really rich and incredibly valuable discussion, and organized in just over a week. Just saying. So that brings us to the end of the formal program. We are going to have lunch and then the round table. So I want to say thanks to everybody who has participated. And I hope some of you, lots of you will stay. The only thing I'm going to ask is sit at tables without chairs, because for us to do the round tables, we really need the table's full. So those of you who have to depart now, Cassandra, run. Please do. But those of you who are staying, we're ready for lunch, and then we'll have some more discussion. The real purpose of today is to get some concrete recommendations and responses to the budget. And I love that my new best friend, Victoria, is really hammering the issues around accountability frameworks and data, because I absolutely agree that without that, everything's just words on paper. So thanks again. Adios to those who are leaving now, and we'll reconvene shortly. Thank you.